Who's required to have a residential builder's license under Michigan law?
Under Michigan law, anyone who's doing more than $600 worth of work in a residential structure is required to have a residential builder's license. That $600, we're talking about material and labor together, and you can't get around it by doing it into $100 or $200 contract segments. So anybody who's doing that work is going to be required to have a license. And a lot of people think about that in terms of just a builder or a person who comes in to do remodeling. It's much broader than that. If you bring people in on your own to do house painting, to do carpet laying, to do tile work, a host of things, excavating, all of those are required to have a license under the maintenance and alteration contractors portion of the licensing law that applies to builders. So it's a wide range of people that have to be licensed. But the big tip-off is it worth more than $600? Then yes, you have to be licensed. There is an exclusion for homeowners. Homeowners do not have to be licensed to work on their homes, or individuals don't have to be licensed to work on property that they own. So if you've got a rental house, you can work on your rental house, but if you hire anybody to work on it, they have to be licensed.
Unlicensed builders often tell homeowners that it's cheaper to do the job if they pull the building permit, or that no permit is necessary. What's wrong with that?
Well, that's one of the great scams that they use. In order to pull a building permit, if you're not the owner or the owner's agent, you have to be a licensed builder. And if you're not a licensed builder, you can't pull the permit. So unlicensed builders simply can't go down and get that permit, and they know it. So they try two ways of doing this. They tell the homeowner to get it because the permit will cost the homeowner less. There's a homeowner discount. That's nonsense. A permit is the same for everybody when they pull it. Or they'll say that the work doesn't need a permit. And that's something you always want to check out. There are some things that don't require permits, but most things you're going to have done around the house are going to require a permit. And they're just trying to get around that section of the law so that you don't know what they're doing is really illegal and not good for you as a consumer.
How else do unlicensed builders try to scam unsuspecting consumers?
They got a number of different things they do. Paying cash, paying everything up front. Those are bad signs. Legitimate builders will not ask for you to pay in cash. You pay one of these guys in cash or one of these gals in cash, and you may not see them in the morning. They'll do the I've got some leftover material from my last job that I can use on this. Legitimate remodelers, legitimate builders really don't overbuy for what they're working on. They're not going to come by and offer you this. In many cases, the unlicensed builder will use substandard materials that have been salvaged from someplace else. It's spring, just along with flowers, these scams bloom too. The roof one is a particular favorite, or the driveway. You get somebody who knocks on your door, says, I was driving by, I did work for your neighbors, I noticed your roof is bad, I noticed your driveway, I just have some materials left over from this. That's a big scam. In many cases, they're not going to do anything to your roof. Legitimate builders don't drive around, legitimate remodelers don't drive around and knock on doors and say, hey, I see that you need some work, let me come in and do it. That's a warning sign that everybody ought to be aware of.
I suppose too for homeowners that hiring an unlicensed builder brings with it the risk of an exposure for some liability issues as well.
There's a lot of liability issues that you face if you hire an unlicensed builder. Of course, the biggest one is the fact that an unlicensed builder is not going to be carrying the workers' compensation insurance that a licensed builder is required to carry in the state. That means if they come onto your property, you hire them, they come onto your property, they injure themselves, or they have people working for them who are injured in an accident, the homeowner bears the responsibility for that. The homeowner will be the one who pays the lost wages. The homeowner won't be the one that pays the accident costs. The homeowner may be the one, if it's a severe enough accident, that pays costs to this person for the rest of their life. That's a huge liability that homeowners face. There's a couple other things too that happen with that. Regardless of whether the work is being done by the homeowner or a licensed contractor or an unlicensed contractor, the work has to meet the requirements of the Michigan Residential Code. So a homeowner who pulls the permit is going to be responsible for assuring that it meets the code requirements. One of the things that builders here in the state who are licensed have to keep their license is a copy of that code book. Unlicensed builders won't have it, won't be familiar with it. So, there are a lot of pitfalls. Sure, you might save a couple of dollars, but you're doing that by hiring somebody who's not paying taxes, who's not carrying insurance, and it's just not a wise thing for you to do as a builder. Plus, if you hire an unlicensed contractor, you're helping that unlicensed contractor to evade the licensing law, and that's illegal in the state.
What do licensed contractors offer consumers that unlicensed builders do not?
Licensed contractors run a legitimate business, and because they run a legitimate business, they're concerned about that business, they're concerned about the reputation of that business. And so they're going to go out of their way to make sure that they do good work for you. Unlicensed contractors here today, gone tomorrow, they're working out of the back of a pickup truck or out of the trunk of their car. They really don't care. They don't have a place of business, or they don't care about their reputation. That's one. When you hire a licensed builder, you have to remember that they've been licensed by the state, which means that especially now, they've had 60 hours of pre-licensure education that's required before they can take a test. They've taken the test, passed the test. They have to show continuing competency every year to continue to have their license. If they fail on continuing competency, their license is pulled. The state checks every application for financial stability. That's particularly important in these times. And again, they know the code. They know how to do the work. With an unlicensed builder, you have no idea what their qualifications are. The other thing that you get with this is, frankly, that the state has a mechanism that they can use to enforce complaints against licensed builders. That doesn't exist for the unlicensed folks. When you go to the state with a complaint, they'll put an advocate on your behalf. They'll investigate the complaint. If they find the complaint's warranted, they're going to make it right for the consumer. If you hire an unlicensed person who does shoddy work, who rips you off, who takes some money and goes, you can't go to the state on that. There's no protection for you. Even a local prosecutor probably won't be interested in that because it's way down on the list of things that they need to look at. So, you get the guarantee that they're licensed, legitimate, you get the protection of the state, making sure that the work is done right. Those are all very good things for you as a consumer.
Final question, what should consumers do if they have questions or concerns about whether a residential builder actually does have a license?
Well, under state law, every residential builder, every residential, and that's remodelers, or every residential, what we call maintenance and alteration contractors, which are the painters, or the excavators, they're the other subspecialties, have to carry a little pocket license with them that has their license number, has an address, has their name. Everybody should be able to show that to the consumer. If they can't produce that wallet card for the consumer, that's a warning sign, and the consumer ought to be careful. The other thing that you should do is you can check out an individual's license with the state. Sometimes you may get a feeling that the license card doesn't look quite right, or there's something just a little bit hinky about that. If you go to www.michigan.gov/builders with an S, that'll take you right to the residential builders page that's operated by the Bureau of Commercial Services with the Department of Energy, Labor, and Economic Growth. And there will be a lookup spot on the right-hand side of that where you can look up and see whether the builder has a legitimate license. There'll also be a number that you can call there to double check whether the builder's licensed. And you can also see if there have been any complaints against that builder. So it serves as sort of a check. You can look and see, is this a quality builder? Have they had a lot of complaints against them? Were those complaints justified? What's happened, etc. It'll give you a history of the license. It's a very good consumer protection tool, and one that everybody should be using.